We've done
Okay, good morning everybody. This is What Does the Bible Say? This is our school broadcast, our school edition. So every Wednesday morning we go 2 hours long with no commercials. We're doing a 2-hour straight Bible study, and we have been in the Old Testament having a study of the book of Kings, and the way that we're doing it, and really I should say just a study of the kings of Israel. Let's go to a Bible passage. So this is what I always say, is for you to have when we do this class, you should have your King James wide margin Bible out. I'm big into wide margin. And someone says, this is a big old Bible. And it's like, yeah. And I just say half of my brain is in here. I hear people, and this is my thing, it worked for me. And I hear a lot of people, they would ask, tips about Bible study, tips about memory work, and then I say, get a King James wide margin. And then they start complaining. And it's like, hey, you asked me what worked for me, and it is the ability to write these notes down, because I am not going to remember everything. I say, get one Bible that you like, buy some backup copies of it, and do not switch. Page placement is huge. I have studied Kings, the book of Kings, multiple times. I have a general idea of where things are going to be, and I know what my notes are going to be like. And so if I can't even think of page placement, book, chapter, verse, I can remember what type of note I had attached to it. So you got to do that. And then as we go through a 2-hour-long class, I say have a notepad out. If you're watching on YouTube, you can pause, you can rewind. But if you're watching live on Star News this morning, you're local, then you need to have a notepad out, because we're going to be going through a lot of things. We're going to be making points, a lot of scriptures here and there. And that's a thing too, as you go through classes like this, you learn how to take notes. And what I mean by that is, some people, they try to write down everything that a teacher will say, and you can't do that. And so you learn to find highlights and things like that. But this is what I wanted to say about our class and how we have structured it. Look at this. In 2 Timothy, this is going to be some of the time frame where the Apostle Paul has found himself in prison. And while he's in prison, he wants to do what? Look, I'm in here. I'm going to read. He tells to Timothy, bring with thee the books, and especially the parchments. And so when I said the book of Kings, we have done it where we are doing Samuel, Kings, and Chronicles together, and I'm overlapping them. My dad is now in the class. We're going to be overlapping the material rather than repeating, because if you do 1 Chronicles, let's talk about this. If you did 1 and 2 Samuel, you get the life of David. And then in order, you read 1 and 2 Kings, okay, you're going all the way up to the captivities. Well, now we're going to go into 1 Chronicles, because we're reading it in order of the text. You're about to study David all over again, when you could have just put it all together, which is what we're trying to do. And here's why I brought this passage up. In reality, religious folk don't read a whole lot. They like, I don't know, I'm saying traditional folk, they don't even like going to sit in the building, and that's basically how they view it. We go on Sunday, we sit in the building. But to be a Christian and not read your Bible, and that's a lot of people. And I'm not even talking about where someone says, yeah, I read my Bible, and in reality, all they do is they read and reread the same passages over and over and over. Whatever type of topic that they're fixated on in the moment, they just look for that everywhere they go, rather than doing a general read through so that you can pick up new things that you was going to ask me that, the best style of study, it is going to sound simplistic, but I would just say to read, with consistency every day. Try to take in as much as you can process in the moment, and the goal is to always be taking in more, right? So that you can actually start reading more and process the information so that you get an overall understanding of the text and not just these little pet ideas that people have. So we're doing this, and this morning we're talking about Rehoboam. We're going to be in 1 Kings chapter 11 and 12. And so I don't know, Charles, are you still back there?
Yes.
Okay, I don't know if that's something you can do on your end or if it's out here, but if you can see the chroma key at the top, if we can do something with, okay, thank you. So this is 1 Kings 11 and 12, and today is one of those classes where, and someone might say that's all the classes, but where somebody says, I don't know what I'm even supposed to do with 1 Kings 11 and 12. Is it in there? Yeah, it's in there, and I know that it's in there. I know that it exists, but what can I do with it as far as the Lord's church in 2022? And so that's what we're going to talk about today, and I'm going to tell you there's going to be a lot of people, and it's really only going to be like brotherhood politicians are not going to like this discussion, and the people that I would call professional pulpiteers, they're not going to like this discussion. Who are the professional pulpiteers? They're the people, the preachers who are hired out by the elders to do the elders' job. The elders are supposed to be teaching over the congregation, but they're not apt to teach, 1 Timothy chapter 3. So they hire an individual, and really he ought to be going out to teach lost souls, but he never does that. They're the professional pulpiteers. They're not going to like this class. But I am talking with you, and you're the person in the pew, and you just say, I wish things were better. And then and some people would say to me, I wish that I did enjoy my religion. It takes work, and once you start cultivating it and you get it to a good place, it takes protection. And so I enjoy my religion, and I think that the brethren that are here are enjoying their religion, and I honestly do feel badly for you, for those who are saying, I don't. I wish things were different, and I think this is how we're going to make things different. It's going to be a process. It's not overnight. Some people are going to have to wake up, and once you get woke up, you're going to have to stay plugged in. You know what I'm saying? It's going to be a lifelong process. So that's what we're doing this morning. We care about you, and we want things to be better where you are. My phone number is 276-806-3641. My email address is calebgrobertson@gmail.com. If you email me, we'll put you on the Informer list, which is a page-and-a-half Bible article that we send out every Sunday morning at about 7 a.m. This past Sunday, we asked the question, or we're answering the question, where was the Church of Christ before civil rights? So before 1960s, where was the Church of Christ, and what type of action were we doing? What type of action were we taking in that time frame? And so we'll have another one this upcoming Sunday. Where was the Church of Christ during the civil rights? And we're going to answer that question also. So calebgrobertson@gmail.com. Various topics, and we do it on a weekly basis. And so this is just the broadcast, the local teaching, the Informer. If you are local, I think it was this morning. Sometimes I have to think about what day it is. This morning we had an article in the Martinsville Bulletin, political parties are not the answer. And that's my thing. It's like I got people in this town, and they're my neighbor, I live with them, and they just got too much hope wound up in a political party, and they're just going to get swamped out in a couple years. And the real answer is going to be real New Testament religion, New Testament Christianity. So if you're local, be checking out the Martinsville Bulletin. If you're local, you can also find us in the Henry County Enterprise. We are getting to have quite a bit of discussion over there. We appreciate these newspapers letting us have so much dialogue. I say I'm getting to play ball, and so I like that. I appreciate it. And then, of course, if you're local, you're watching on Star News, and if you got a cousin named Ted over in Wisconsin, and you say, what does the Bible say would be good for Ted? Well, we would say it this way: help us, help you, help other people. And you do that by sharing what does the Bible say on YouTube, and also explaining to some people how to find it. Okay? Not everybody's going to know how to get there. So if they got any type of smartphone, YouTube is already built into their phone. Help them find Johnny Robertson YouTube, what does the Bible say? This is what it's all going to look like. Now, we do this. I'm going to skip this. We're going to have these passages later in the class. We're doing this class to help you better know your Bible, and we say doing that without moving across America. But if you are so inclined and you basically say, look, I want to work, I'm going to move to Virginia and work with the brethren out there, I would say this: be prepared to work, and then be prepared to keep a mindset of working once you get here. And all that we're doing is to prep for evangelism, and I say two things. My classes focus on two things: God's grace and evangelism, and I don't think you're going to want to be evangelistic if you don't understand God's grace. You're just out here trying to sell like a yoke of bondage to people if you don't understand God's grace. And you're not going to want it, and they're not going to want it. So those are the two things that I try to hit on, and then of course we make tidbits here and there. Now, for people who watch this school, I'm going to have a quote pretty soon by Curtis Cates. He's the former director of the Memphis School of Preaching. And you can see the heading is, they know it, they don't always practice it. And so, you start studying history and you start paying attention to things, it can be uncomfortable. And so, I only got to have, in all reality, I only had Curtis Cates for about 2 hours in the whole time that I was there, because he was not doing well with his health while I was there. But he taught my dad in the 80s, and my dad loved Curtis Cates and appreciated what he did for him and the education that he was giving to people. And so what I'm saying is, it's impossible for one individual to be 100% consistent. And someone says, well, they ought to try. They should try. Are you trying? As you say to people, they ought to try. Are you trying? I'm trying. But today we're going to look at a quote that he made. We're going to listen to a quote that he made at what was called Power Lectures back in the 90s. And we're going to show historical inconsistencies. And it's all going to come out of 1 Kings chapter 12. Look, you got to be able to say these things and people not get bent out of shape. And I tell you, you say these things, it doesn't mean that I'm trying to put anybody in hell. I'm looking back at history, and I'm saying, this was a bad move. Right? Everybody's got to do that. If you're going to look at history, you're going to find that stuff. And that's why I say to do Kings the way that I'm doing Kings. So let's look at this. Case for Rehoboam. This is what I'm talking about. People say, Caleb, I don't understand how you're able to give these people so much room. And the way that I say it is, we did it about a week or two ago, where we said the Old Testament study, Kings and any of the personalities, has to be funneled through the book of Romans and Galatians chapter 3. And this is my thing. The grace that gets taught in Romans and Galatians chapter 3 has always existed. It's not the idea of, oh, grace came into being during the New Testament. No. Anybody who is saved has always been saved by grace through faith, which is Ephesians 2:8 and 9. We recognize Adam and Eve did not have the command to be baptized. But individuals, if they're saved, Hebrews chapter 11, verse number 6 says it's impossible to please God without faith. So someone says, I don't understand how you give these people so much room. I am studying my Old Testament with a knowledge of the book of Romans. And when I look at my brethren, and I'm saying of whom I am not the judge, but as I look at people that I work with and inhabit a community with, I'm looking at them basically funneled or through a lens of the book of Romans. So someone says, I don't understand how you give these people so much room. And my answer to that is, if you don't give these people some grace in the book of Kings, none of them are going to heaven. And I tell you, in all honesty, you don't start giving people grace that are around you, you're going to have everybody going. And this is my point on this too. For people who would say, if you gave me a compliment and you say, Caleb, you do a pretty good job of, making a good case for these kings, that they were products of their circumstance, and there was all these different factors that we can't always comprehend, which is why I say the all-knowing being, God, is their judge. So there's factors that we can't always comprehend. You notice when I go through the text, I will openly say that the things that they do are wrong. And I'll show the consequence of them and why we would like to try to avoid them. But here's what I want to say. If you did give me a compliment and you say, we think you do a pretty good job of making a good case, a favorable case for these people, I could do a good job making a bad case for them. I could put everybody in this book in hell. And I could do that with you too. And that's why I say we need to try to teach ourselves to do it in a good, favorable way, because if not, we're going to have the other option. And someone says, well, Caleb, someone could do it to you. They could. And that's why we are appealing to grace and mercy. The thing that worries me is that we're going to, that I say, and I don't really mean worry like it would be unfavorable. I would rather that we not be able to do it. But it's, someone on an outside looking in, they just say, Caleb never saw this about himself. Well, we did just have several classes on the deceivableness of sin. And so I basically am trying to live my life by James chapter 1, the Bible is a mirror, and I try to look at myself in the mirror on a regular basis. So I do this, and I see God's grace in the Bible, and then I see you, and I want to be gracious to you. Luke 6:37. This is just we're making an intro. We're making an introduction case to making a case for these people. Even while I say today's class is going to be pretty hard. Luke 6:37 and 38. If you don't give it, you're not going to get it. And so when people say to me, I don't understand how you make such a case, I am hoping that a good, favorable case is made on my account. So yes, I'd like to hold out some hope for people. And I'm not just necessarily going around saying, people asking me, you think they went to heaven or hell? What are you asking me? I don't know everything in their life. And basically, are you asking me to weigh them against you? Because when it's up, like they say, you think they're going to heaven or hell, and it's like, well, if they're going to hell, I think you're going to see them. That's what I'm saying. I don't understand that. Now, that's not the same thing as someone asking the question, has this person obeyed the gospel? Is this person a Christian? This is what people are having a hard time with. And it's the idea of, look, if a person is a child of God, then I have, in some sense, Jesus is teaching me in Luke 6, in some sense, I have to give them something if I'm expecting to get something in return. Now, if I'm just going to be super hard and stringent on these people, then I'm told in Luke chapter 6, where is it? Good measure, pressed down, shaken together, running over, shall men give into your bosom. For with the same measure that you meet withal, it shall be measured to you again. I'm not talking about compromising. I'm not talking about saying, well, some of these things are a gray area. I'm saying let's call things that are sinful, sinful, and let's do a good job of explaining why God called them sinful things, because they would hurt us in some fashion. But excuse me if I'm not just trying to put everybody, Caleb Robertson stamp, they're going to hell. I don't want to do that. You got to make a case for them sometime. And this is my thing. Me being this way doesn't remove our responsibility. You can be gracious and still have your responsibility. It's not an either-or thing. That's the issue of Romans chapter 6, verse number 1. What shall we say then? Shall we continue in sin that grace may abound? God forbid. How shall we that are dead to sin live any longer therein? Well, how are we that are dead to sin live any longer therein? You are not going to 100% of the time avoid sin, which means you're going to need grace. Well, if I'm basically out here saying that God's grace is going to compensate for my failure, then why bother at all? That would then create chaos. The law is there for structure. We've said before, it's not that the Bible is restrictive. The Bible is constructive. It gives us good character. It helps us be good neighbors, helps us be a good spouse. A good spouse helps us be a good parent. You don't just want to throw the law out. But you're recognizing you can't always keep the law, and then that's where God is showing Himself to be a gracious God, as the Bible would say, a gracious Father does. So this is what people have a hard time with sometimes when we do these type of studies and we have these conversations, and of course we're studying Kings. Having a hope of grace doesn't remove your responsibility. 1 Corinthians 5, 6, and 7. Look, when we at a congregational level, when we see someone consistently, and this is the thing too, y'all, I've said this in the past, recently, and let's just pick smoking. If you basically tell your brethren, I'm trying to quit smoking, and I'm having a hard time with it, that is Romans 7. That's you making a war against your flesh. But when it just so happens that you hear smoking discussed from the pulpit, and then you get up and walk out and say, well, if he's just going to talk about my particular sin, I'm leaving. You have now changed where you were fighting against your flesh. Now you're fighting against us for telling the truth. That's a problem. And so when we find those things, when we find people who are just going to openly fight against the truth and then promote the error, then yes, we're going to have to purge that out. And so the situation of 1 Corinthians chapter 5 is adultery. And these people evidently were just fine to stay in it for the time being. And so if you basically say, well, we recognize that we're breaking Scripture over here and we're going to continue to live in it, then yeah, I'm going to practice church discipline. I'm going to encourage the brethren to practice church discipline. Your glorying is not good. Know you not that a little leaven leaveneth the whole lump? Purge out therefore the old leaven, that you be a new lump, as ye are unleavened, for even Christ our Passover sacrifice for us. So in these conversations, I'm saying Paul obviously writes the book of Romans, and then Paul writes 1 Corinthians 5. These aren't contradictions. We have responsibility, and we have a responsibility, number one, ourselves to repent, and then encourage other people to do it when they need it. 2 Thessalonians 3, verse number 6. We command you, brethren, in the name of our Lord Jesus Christ, that you withdraw yourselves from every brother that walketh disorderly, not after the traditions which he received of us. And in context, the only idea of withdrawing from somebody in the church is like if they, only if they stop believing the story about Jesus. Well, in reality, they were withdrawing from these people, if you want to say, for loafing. What? Being a sluggard. They're not working. For even when we were with you, this we commanded you, that if any would not work, neither should he eat. So apparently this has already been a problem, he says, because when we were with you, we talked about it. If they're not working, they shouldn't eat. And it's an interesting thing that this is the same discussion of 1 Timothy 6, and 1 Timothy is a discussion over to Ephesus. Look at this. Many servants who are under the yoke count their masters worthy in all honor. The masters, he says, let them not despise them because they are brethren, but rather do themselves service because they are faithful, beloved, partakers of benefit. These things teach and exhort. If any man teach otherwise, and consent not to wholesome words, even the words of our Lord Jesus Christ, and to the doctrine which is according to godliness, he's proud, knowing nothing, but doting about questions, strife of words, whereof cometh envy, strife, railings, evil surmisings, perverse disputings of men of corrupt minds, and destitute of the truth, supposing that gain is godliness, from such withdraw thyself. Well, the immediate context is the same thing as 2 Thessalonians 3:10, is people not wanting to work. Well, that doesn't essentially have anything to do with the death, burial, and the resurrection of Jesus, does it? So someone says, well, the only time we're going to withdraw from somebody is if they've changed their views on Jesus the Christ. Well, the apostle of Jesus said in 1 Timothy 6 that if they're not going to uphold part of the doctrine, which is being a good steward and a hard worker, then they need to be withdrawn from. 2 Thessalonians 3 also. And this is basically where people are out there and they own their own small business, and they hear me saying this and they say, amen. You want good workers. This is a functioning part of society. This is what the Bible's helping us do. Be a functional part of society. Be a hard worker. Take care of your family. Be good to the people in the community. This is fantastic stuff. 2 Thessalonians 3, 14 and 15. Note that man, if any man obey not our word by this epistle, note that man and have no company with him, that he may be ashamed. And that's the thing too. You should feel bad, right? Somebody says, well, I'm not trying to make you feel bad. Yeah, sometimes I am. You should feel bad. That's the same thing back to me. Sometimes I make myself feel bad, right? And that's the thing about people who are around you and your friends. I had somebody recently, and they're acting like it's a bad thing. They just flat out said, Caleb, you made me feel bad. And I said, you keep being my friend longer, it's going to happen again. You're going to do it to me. In reality, a lot of us don't know what it means to have friends. You want acquaintances who are yes men, and you like acquaintances who have just a little bit, this much shared interest, but you don't really want people in your life. And that's what a friend is going to be. They're going to be in your life. And they're going to talk to you, and you're going to talk to them, and things are going to be uncomfortable. And here's another thing. We don't know, people are not practicing maintaining a friendship. It's like you have these problems, and you say, well, we just had to break over it. You can't fix it? And someone says, well, they got to give and they got to give. Look, y'all can both be wrong, but it is the case that somebody's going to be right and somebody's going to be wrong. I don't understand. And sometimes people just don't want to work it out, and that's just going to be a part of it. But these scriptures are in the Bible. And here's another thing that people have a hard time with. This is coming back to 1 Kings. I have to do an intro with you, okay? Rebuke does not mean instant withdrawal. I have to give you a chance to hear the information, and it is not coming down to milliseconds. Not equal instant withdrawal. So here's 2 Corinthians 8:10. Herein I give my advice, for this is expedient for you, who have begun before not only to do, but also to be forward a year ago. So there's a year's difference, or a year's time, between 1 Corinthians and 2 Corinthians. 1 Corinthians 5 is addressed. But when you get to 1 Corinthians 16, Paul says, now I'm going to come see y'all and I'm going to spend the winter with you. And then by the time you get 2 Corinthians, which is a year later after 1 Corinthians 5, 2 Corinthians 2 says that the whole 1 Corinthians 5 situation has been repented of. Fantastic. But here's my point. There's a year's difference in there. And so we should stop expecting people to change overnight. They need to have time to process. Let's look at something else. Okay, Proverbs 25:15. By long forbearing is a prince persuaded. It is going to take time. I have said on this class before, people did not obey the gospel in Acts chapter 2 right away. They had time with John, Jesus' cousin. They had time with John the Baptist, and then Jesus taught for 3 years. And then in Acts chapter 2, they're getting even more information. By long forbearing is a prince persuaded. Me giving you a warning, and that someone says, well, who do you think you are? We're all giving each other warnings. And somebody said to me one time, they said, well, Caleb, I just don't feel like answering to you. I get that, but you're going to be answering to somebody. You're always going to be in a realm, and I'm saying somebody's circle. And if you're not, you're just sitting at home by yourself, and you don't have the biblical right to do that. We have to be associated with God's people. So he said, I don't feel like answering to you. You are going to have to give an answer to somebody if you're going to be with them. But when we have these moments of warning, 1 Thessalonians 2:14 says, warn them and comfort the feeble. So you warn some people. That doesn't mean I'm like at the moment ready to withdraw from you. And there it is, 1 Thessalonians 5:14. We exhort you, brethren, warn them that are unruly, comfort the feeble-minded, support the weak, and be patient toward all men. So you put the info out there. I expect people to go do their own research. I don't want them just to do it because I said so. So they go out and do their research. They might start asking around, and they say, well, it's pretty clear what Caleb is saying. I think he's making a good point. And they're asking these other people, why haven't we not done this? Why are we not correcting it now? They're just getting a sense and the feeling. I am okay with that. Me sounding an alarm, ringing a bell, does not necessarily require constant action. And that's where somebody says, yeah, we all understand they need to repent now, but they have to be convicted. They have to be really on board with this decision, and that's how y'all get a bunch of these flip-floppers. You pressure them into stuff that they're not actually informed on. Well, I don't know now that was actually the right call, and da-da-da-da. Some of those folks you can't do anything about. But a lot of times, they're just uninformed. And sometimes, that's on them. Because we all know that a lot of people don't pay attention. And basically, the world just has their attention, and the church is an afterthought. 2 Timothy 2:24-26. Look, I am doing this. Someone says we're kind of like taking our time here. I'm giving you all this because we are really about to have, I'm saying for some people who know better, some people are paying attention and they're realizing how bad things are around them. I am about to give biblical information that's going to shake a lot of people up. So in 2 Timothy 2:24-26, the servant of the Lord must not strive, but be gentle unto all men, apt to teach, patient, in meekness instructing those that oppose themselves, if God peradventure will give them repentance to the acknowledging of the truth, and that they may recover themselves out of the snare of the devil, who are taken captive by him at his will. Here's what I want to say now. I'm also doing this for the people who have a mind to try. And this is what I mean. What happens is a lot of Christians, they wake up, and I don't mean like in the morning, I'm saying they start to see themselves and they say, I haven't been as active as I ought to be. And then, or whatever, I haven't been paying attention, I haven't been the student, I haven't been evangelistic, and I haven't cared for my part of the church as I ought to. God bless you for even realizing that, because a lot of people don't want to. But this is what they do. They burn out. And I don't want to see you burn out. Like someone says, well, you don't want to see them lukewarm. Obviously, I don't want to see them lukewarm, but I don't want to see them burn out. And I think, too, it's like, let me say this. Congregation that has elders, and they're unqualified, and you say, Caleb, I'm trying to work on these elders. Hey, look, I'm going to show you a couple. Look at 1 Timothy chapter 5. Someone says, well, I don't know where you get this idea about I'm working on the elders. 1 Timothy 5:20, them that sin rebuke before all, that others may fear also. Yeah, elders sometimes need to be rebuked. Having the wonderful qualifications that they do does not mean that they are going to be perfect. So there are going to be occasions where they themselves have to be rebuked. Are you doing that? God bless you. Look at Hebrews. I am sincerely saying that because there's a bunch of people I don't care. So look at Hebrews chapter 13. And you go over to verse number 17. So if you're in a congregation, you've got these unqualified elders and you're trying, can I just say this to you? In some sense, you need to give yourself like a breath. And this is what I mean. You're not an elder. Now, if you are honestly being conscious of your own shortcomings and sometimes your own short-sightedness, and you say, but I'm still trying, I have to say to you, you're not the, and I'm not, this is what I'm saying, you're not going to be judged as hard as they are. There's a reason that Hebrews 13:17 says they must give an account. You're trying to help them do their, and I'm not talking about you being like a bothersome know-it-all. And you know what? If you are a bothersome know-it-all, I hope the elders handle you. Everybody needs this. But if you're out there and you're working, and you can already say, look, I am getting tired and I am getting burnt out, I would hope that you can think about this. You're not actually the elder there, which means you're not going to be judged as hard as they are. And they knew that when they took that office. They knew that Hebrews 13:17 was in the Bible, and if they did not know that, then no, they shouldn't even be in the eldership anyway. They're going to be judged harder, and you're just trying to help them help the congregation. So I'm saying, y'all, you got to give yourself something. And I say that about Christians in general. A lot of Christians out there, they are hard on themselves, and a lot of people need to do better. But I'm saying there are a lot of people out there that they are concerned, they are trying, and they don't give themselves enough credit for, I'm saying, having real New Testament faith, for climbing out of traditionalism, for having appreciation for the truth and loving God's children. You should be getting more credit for that. And this is where someone says, now, Caleb, don't be going too far. They need to work. And it's like, you know, I hear a bunch of people saying that somebody else needs to work, and I don't think that they're doing half the work they ought to be doing. I'm saying the person who's like looking at everybody else saying, well, they need to work. I was like, what are you doing? Yeah, we all need to be working. It is a thing. We need all hands on deck. Instead of just somebody, like I got my hand, and my hand is to say everybody else needs to put their hands on. You know, I'm trying to help you, help the elders, help the congregation. Now, here's the quote. We're talking about church splits today, 1 Kings chapter 12. And this is my thing. They know it, and they don't always practice it. And this is a clip of Curtis Cates from the 1996 Power Lectures. Give a listen.
His father-in-law, and he said, Sanballat, I have a... Nehemiah said that there was a fellow by the name of Manasseh, and he was married to Sanballat, the Horonite, the Samaritan's daughter. And he went to his father-in-law, and he said, Sanballat, I have an opportunity to become high priest, but I can't do it married to your daughter. I love my wife, and I love my children. Well, I have to give them up. He said, oh, no, you don't have to give them up. I'll go up here to Mount Gerizim, and I'll build you a temple up there and an altar. And that's what he did. And the church in Jerusalem split. You know who split it? Nehemiah. You know what over? False doctrine. That's what over. False practices. Somebody said, oh, these splits are terrible. Yes, some splits are. But if they're over the doctrine and the teaching of God, brother, they are God's sin and a blessing. And so the church are. But if they're over the doctrine and the teaching of God, brother, they are God's sin and a blessing. And so the false doctrine, that's what over. False practices. Somebody said, oh, these splits are terrible. Yes, some splits are. But if they're over the doctrine and the teaching of God, brother, they are God's sin and a blessing. False doctrine. That's what over. False practices. Somebody said, oh, these splits are terrible. Yes, some splits are. But if they're over the doctrine and the teaching of God, brother, they are a godsend and a blessing. And so the church split there. And you had the beginning of the worship on Mount Gerizim, the worship of the Samaritans. Nehemiah wouldn't compromise. There are a lot of preachers today, their middle name is Compromise, not Nehemiah. There wasn't an ounce of compromise. There was not a drop of compromising blood in his body. And if there is in you, you need a transfusion, my friends. Nehemiah wouldn't compromise. There are a lot of preachers today, their middle name is Compromise, not Nehemiah. There wasn't an ounce of compromise. There was not a drop of compromising blood in his body. And if there is in you, you need a transfusion, my friends. You know who split it? Nehemiah. You know what over? False doctrine. That's what over. False practices. Somebody said, oh, these splits are terrible. Yes, some splits are. But if they're over the doctrine and the teaching of God, brother, they are a godsend and a blessing.
Now, I don't know if you could hear everybody in that room say amen to that. I say amen to that. But here's my thing. These preaching schools will blackball you for splitting a congregation. It's one thing, I'm saying as we get going into this, I love Curtis Cates. The Lord loves Curtis Cates. And basically, and I would say this too, the Lord does not love Curtis Cates because Curtis Cates ran a school of preaching for however many years. The Lord loves Curtis Cates because he's a child of his. Y'all going to have to get this idea out of your mind. It's like we're all trying to do good work, but this idea where some people get to be preferred, he's a child of God. You're a child of God. And I'm saying, y'all, it's one thing to get in a room with a bunch of people who agree with you, and, you know, they're pretty confident they're all going to say amen. Y'all, the schools say one thing, they practice another. Memphis School of Preaching, big time compromising with Bear Valley, and I'm saying the schools like Fried Hardeman. When we were at Memphis and they sent us to Fried Hardeman, you didn't even have to go to any of the lectures. Why? Because Memphis did not really even want to be there. Literally, you could spend all day long in the book room. I'm saying shop, bookstore. Different bookstores ran by brethren would bring all their books to the Fried Hardeman lectures. They'd sell them. You could just stand there for like 8 hours that day and just stare at the same book. Didn't even have to go to one of the lectures. Do you know why? Because Memphis School of Preaching did not really care about being there. It is a political union. You do 2 years at Memphis. You transfer your credits over to Fried Hardeman. You finish up a bachelor's degree in some form of a biblical study. Then you can go on to these other places and get masters and a doctorate. But they have created such a political machine that for Curtis Cates to say, yeah, church splits are awful, but if it's over false doctrine, then it's a godsend. Here's how it works now. Not only is the school, Memphis or Brown Trail or whatever's in Austin, Southwest, and then East Tennessee, which doesn't be called East Tennessee anymore. It's not just that the schools stand alone now. Now they have hitched themselves so tightly to all of the colleges, it's a whole nother matter. And this is my thing. Curtis Cates can say that church splits are a godsend, but this is how the system works. The school teaches a student to be a preacher. The school then recommends the student to a particular congregation. The student gets to the congregation and basically starts asking, I don't know why they sent me down here. There's so many different problems. He starts trying to clean the congregation up, and the congregation splits. Well, now the school is going to say to the student, that was a supporting congregation. They are not advocating for church splits. Everything revolves around money coming to the school. When we were at Memphis, we had teachers who wouldn't even be there half the time. Why? Because they were going to supporting congregations to preach meetings. They support you to be at the school. Why are you always out teaching meetings? It is constantly money coming in. This lecture, while I say amen to it, I don't think it's a realistic picture. And I'm saying, y'all, I know basically the way that the system is working right now, and let me say this. This is why we are doing our school broadcast the way that we are doing. I want you to have the information. I don't want you to be loyal to me. I don't want you, I sure don't want you saying my name when you're making arguments to people, Caleb Robertson said. And it's like, if you can stand on your feet and keep me out of it. And I'm saying, I don't want to, and someone says, why, you don't want controversy? No, I don't want to have to come in and answer them and then bury you on top of it. And I've done it. And I will do it, and I've had people call me, and they say stuff to me on the phone, and I say, you called me for a reason. And they said, that's right. And I said, I am not agreeing with you. And then we start working through it. The school don't care about doing that with you. They are worried about lectureship circuits, meeting seasons, and it's the same 3-4 day meetings where you talk to the same saved crowd and no evangelism gets done. Yeah, I'm saying, y'all, we are on track for a split. And there's people who are going to want to do evangelism, and then there are people who are going to want to keep the political machine alive. And I do not care a thing about the political machine. It is partyism to the T. These schools, if they weren't so tightly wound up together, they would all be trashing each other, which is what they've done in the past. And then what was it? It's like you have your school and you get somebody who's more serious than the school can be to come in and be an adjunct professor, which is what Bear Valley was doing with Stafford North and J. Lockhart. They were bringing Stafford up from Oklahoma Christian. Oklahoma Christian was having people come in from Pepperdine, Phil Brookman, bringing, Keith Lancaster from Acapella. He's a fixture at OC. And I just don't understand why y'all keep doing it. But I do understand, and it's because the politics. So, man, y'all, and I'm saying this, I've already said, and I don't have to just keep repeating myself, I don't have a problem with Curtis Cates. But I'm saying, you do this to yourself where you, and I'm saying this, years ago, Dub McClish said to my dad, because my dad very early on was not playing the political game with folk, and Dub McClish said, Johnny, you keep this up, you're never going to have a lectureship of your own. Big deal. Most of the lectureships stink. It's the same lessons everywhere. They just preach it here, and they take it over to Lubbock, and they preach the same lesson over there, and then they bring it up, to the east, and they preach it a third time. It's lazy. It's unchallenging. It's not evangelistic. But this is what the guys who are graduates do. They go out, and I'm saying, y'all, all they know how to do is recreate what they saw the school do. I will start a workshop for saved folk. I'll start a lectureship for preachers. And everybody, y'all, is just moving from one thing to the next big thing. And you see these preachers come out of school, they climb, and I tell you, I'm fixing to make another point. They climb the ladder when they get out of school, and then something bad happens. Whatever it is, y'all, this is my thing. These young guys, and they're called rising stars. They come out of school, they start making some headway, and something happens. I'm saying, y'all, it could be, I'm just going to say it. I see a lot of young guys my age, guys I went to school with, they're getting divorces. Now, you know that Matthew 19:9 is in the Bible. I don't know what their circumstances are, but I will just switch off of this. I'll get off the divorce. I know that years ago, and someone might say, well, you don't know all the details. Well, that's true. But I will say this. I know of preachers and teachers in schools who have had a hard time, they've been human, and then they get fired. And this is my thing. The political machine will drop you the instant you become a liability to the political machine. The schools of preaching will drop you as soon as you become a liability. You're a student, you're a graduate, you're out there, you start doing something, they'll drop you, they'll blackball you. They got to protect the machine. It's gross. It's disgusting. But in some senses, I say, who have participated in it is what we deserve because we participated in it. I want you to have freedom. Galatians chapter 5. Now, here's where I say, Galatians 5, I want you to have freedom and not be tied to anybody's brotherhood political spectrum. Stand fast, therefore, in the liberty wherewith Christ has made you free, made us free. Be not entangled again with the yoke of bondage. 5:13 says, For brethren, ye have been called unto liberty, only use not liberty for an occasion to the flesh, but by love serve one another. Somebody says, well, Caleb, if we don't have the colleges and we don't have the preaching schools, how are we going to get people, young men, trained? You're going to get some qualified elders in there. It's not rocket science. And I'm saying, y'all, someone says, well, we don't have any. You don't have any because we've been farming it out to these schools who are not even doing a good job. The aged men, that they be sober, grave, temperate, sound in faith and in charity and patience. Look, so I saw a young guy go to the Freed Hardeman lectures, and you know, if he said it or not, I think the name was Philip Jenkins. He's related to like Dale and Jeff. And so Philip Jenkins says, and the quote got taken down, Philip Jenkins made the quote, teenagers are the best ministers to teenagers. And then underneath that, I saw Brad Harrop get on, and Brad Harrop said to Caleb Sampson, who made the post originally, Brad Harrop said, I guess we just cut Titus 2 outside of our Bible. God bless you, Brad. Thank you. What are we doing? And I'm saying it's political machines where we just have like a single outlet of where we get our information from the brotherhood politic, and then we just create what we know. Lectureships here and there, workshops here and there, and we're all just trying to basically climb a ladder. Now you can just say that I'm wrong, and you're just saying it, but I am saying, you know good and well that evangelism is not the Church of Christ forte anymore. You know that. You got house to house, heart to heart, and GBN praising an annual day of door knocking. We go door knocking every Sunday. Annual day of door knocking, and out of 365, we made one effort to go out and meet strangers. Somebody says, well, Caleb, that's not all they're doing. Well, and I appreciate some of the changes that are going on over at GBN. And somebody might say, well, who are you? I'm nobody. But I'm an observer just like you are. I'm a participant just like you are. I'm a child of God just like you are. I'm doing this, man, because I care about you. Let me take another moment. Why would I do this? I know a young guy. And I'm saying, he may not want me saying his name, but I'm just saying, I know a young man named Sage Bridges, and I know why he left the congregation in Texas, because the congregation in Texas that used to be Johnson Street, and I think the guy's name is Jimmy, and people are just calling him Howdy Doody. He gets up on a Wednesday night, and all he's doing is reading Christmas letters from the kids to Santa. He doesn't preach. And it's like he left the congregation. And I said to him, you know, you're just leaving it behind for somebody else to come into this mess, and then 2 years later they're going to leave. He said, well, I hope the elders are going to fix it. And I understand. I'm not fighting him on that question. He is not the elder. I already said that in the Bible class today. Hebrews 13:17. Those elders who are just going to let that congregation go downhill because that guy is somebody's child's friend from college, and now he's the preacher and he's doing a horrible job, the elders are going to answer for that. The people are going to suffer for it, but the elders are going to answer for it. And so he leaves. And he may be fine with that at this point. He's from California, got to go back home to California. He may like that. But I'm saying I do know a lot, and he's my age, I do know a lot of young people my age, they don't want to move. And they don't want, you know, their kids going to a new school and all this stuff that goes with moving. It is a process, and I'm saying I know a lot of guys that I went to school with, and they get moved around every 2 years. And a lot of the guys I went to school with have just flat out quit. A lot of guys I went to school with shouldn't have gone to school in the first place. They didn't really want to be there, and they didn't intend on being serious. Different classes are different ways. But the school should not graduate those people, and they do, because that person then goes back to a congregation that will potentially stay a supporter of the school for years to come. There's some people watching this, and they don't like it. I'm not wrong. And this is one of our big problems in the brotherhood, is that we have become so political and basically lost track of autonomy. There's a book that you can read called The Free Church by a man named James DeForest Murch. I don't know when it was written. You're going to find out some things about James DeForest Murch, and you're going to say, well, I don't know that I like that. Well, I don't like some stuff about James DeForest Murch, but the book on its own is a pretty good book, and it's about local autonomy. Local autonomy is pretty much non-existent in a lot of these congregations because the elders don't know anything. The evangelist doesn't actually evangelize, and they just intend on getting a new man 3 years from now from whatever particular school of preaching it is that they like. So, what do we do? This is where I say there is where a split needs to take place. And then in some senses you have to wonder, I get it. Someone says, well, we're working at a split, Caleb. We're just trying to be veiled and discreet. I don't think that works. Veiled and discreet. Y'all trying to hold both sides of the party is what you're doing. You're trying to hold everybody's hands. And this is my thing. Hard conservatives promote this book, J.D. Tant, Texas Preacher, and they don't follow this book. So when you get, I don't remember what chapter it is. How about that? I highlighted it in green and it went all the way away. I'll have to read it to you. So J.D. Tant, whatever chapter it is, he goes to what's called the Austin meeting, and it's an annual meeting. And they, again, in the political scope, they're starting to feel this pressure they don't like of political scope, and this is what they're wanting to do. In Austin, this thing that y'all can't see, buy the book, J.D. Tant, and read it and you'll find it. He says there was, and he used the word, he said there was a scheme to be put before the next state convention to not allow any man to be the state evangelist who was also the editor of a paper. Here's my thing, y'all. So they had this collection of power that they were trying to fight back at the Austin meeting, J.D. Tant, Texas, Austin, Texas, annual Austin meeting. And they got this collection of power they're trying to fight back. They're basically fighting a monopoly. Man, if you're an editor and you're also being selected to be the state evangelist, you've got a lot of power. Y'all shouldn't have been doing that nonsense in the first place. State convention, state evangelist, and then the idea of editing a paper. You ain't going to tell me nothing about what I can and can't do with the paper. I have my own individualistic rights to print a paper if I want to, and you do too, and then other people have the right to say we don't want to read it. That's how it works. But they start this thing about who can do what and all this stuff, and at a state convention level. Well, all that's junk anyways, but then they start talking about we're going to vote to fix it. And so you know what they did? The side who came up with this idea about, fighting back on a collection of power because they didn't like the way it was going, they brought in a busload of girls from a college. I don't know what college, but they brought a busload of girls in, and the man who brought them, he said, when I vote, y'all vote. And the liberals, they would say in the book, the liberals won that day. Well, if y'all are coming to that point, you need to have a split anyway. And this is what I'm saying. We read it in the history books, we promote it and we tout it, J.D. Tant, Texas Preacher, splitting the congregation. They don't do it because it hurts the political machine. This was a political machine in whatever year that it was, state convention. And here's the thing, we have to wonder how much of this type of behind-the-scenes planning is going on when they have these big mega events like PTP where everybody's getting together to see and be seen and all this stuff that goes on behind the scenes. They were doing full-out state convention. Now someone says, well, Caleb, you can't accuse them of that. I said, I wonder. I can ask questions. All this collection of information of a political field, it's not helping anything. We can all look at it, the scene and recognize it's not helping anything. Can I encourage you to do this? It would be helpful. Heresy and church splits. You should read these articles by Alexander Campbell. Christian Baptist, volume number 4, look at pages 95 and, whatever would consist the entirety of that article. Page 95 and then page 204, Christian Baptist, volume number 4. Millennial Harbinger, 1837, on pages 411, 506, 561. Millennial Harbinger, 1839, pages 62 and 63. Millennial Harbinger, 1860, pages 21 to 28, and then his notes in the Christian System, pages 76 to 84. These would be helpful. These would be helpful to the whole scene. Basically, if you can find these and you can read them, it goes with everything that I'm saying this morning. I have to reemphasize, I want people to do well. I want the congregations to do well. I want people to be happy about being a Christian. I want elders who can really teach and edify the congregation. The young men are freed up to go out and talk to lost people. That'd be fantastic. I would dispense with youth ministers, youths. I would dispense with youth ministers. Parents, you made that baby. I made a baby. It's my job to raise it. I'm not about to farm him out to the Bible class teacher, the youth minister, and everybody else but me. You made the baby, raise the baby. So I don't think that youth ministers are necessary at all. Parents need to do a better job. They need to be teaching their kids more than just on Wednesday night and Sunday morning. This is a wake-up call for us. We've seen it in history. We're going to be seeing more history as we go through this. Now, this is where we get into our text of 1 Kings chapter 12. Now, Jonathan, are you back there?
Yeah.
Okay. Charles has something already on the background. I just need a commercial break. So, at this moment, we're going to take a very quick commercial break. We've had our discussion, intro discussion. When I come back, we're going to look at 1 Kings chapter 12, how it's a playbook for church splits. Okay, take a quick commercial. We'll be right back in just a moment. Don't go anywhere. Testament faith saves you. And I'm saying there are some mean-hearted, mean-spirited people out there that would not think twice of stepping on you. So yes, I think there's value when a Christian has a cultivated conscience by the law. Ha. So, like I said, that's very nice. I just got a text this is from my dad. This is just, I don't even know what time it is. We can go ahead and have just a moment together, and we'll start doing through our commercial. So this was in, like I said, the Roanoke Times, and I said, we're in Martinsville, we don't even get the Roanoke paper down here anymore. So Dad just texted me and he said, Ken Reese sent me a copy of your article. Ken Reese is our lawyer. He said, Ken Reese sent me a copy of your article in the Roanoke Times. Ken represents us, and one time Ken Reese gets a lot of pretty high-profile cases. And one time my dad asked him, why do you fool with us? And Ken Reese's response was, sometimes it's good. Sometimes you just want to do something good. That's what his statement was for working with us. And, we get to have it through Ken Reese. So if you're in the area, you're going to see Christians having discussion in the Roanoke Times. Come back over here. Martinsville Bulletin. You're watching this broadcast, and I would say this. I would hope that you would say, this was beneficial information out of Galatians and Romans. I hope it helps you. I want people to feel good about being a Christian. I want them to be confident in their salvation. There's a lot of people, and I'm saying, to the degree where we get out of this business where someone says, are you saved? And you say, I sure hope so. Are you saved? I am saved. I'm going to heaven. I hope it's beneficial for you. YouTube Johnny Robertson. Put into Google, YouTube Johnny Robertson, purple white banner. What does the Bible say? See my dad's picture. See the Watch Live icon. Email me at calebgrobertson@gmail.com. Get on the informer list every Sunday. It's a page-and-a-half Bible article. We're doing all this, y'all, as we study this information today because we want people to have the truth. And I think this too, y'all. I think we have no clue. Let me take a moment. I think that we really have no clue just yet how many people have totally given up on religion. And it's like I'm saying there's a lot of things that people are upset about right now, and sometimes that's just how society goes. But if you're someone who's watching this broadcast, Okay, now this is where before we even move on, this is where we go back to Galatians chapter 5. And somebody might say, Caleb, the only way that you get to do this is because for years your dad has not been associated with anybody's party. I recognize that. That's what I'm trying to encourage you to do, is to not be tied to anybody's party. And I know that my dad has different friends, and the parties want them to stop being my dad's friend. Y'all, the party is self-serving. The party is self-protecting. Who's the party? All the schools of preaching that have now gotten in bed with the colleges, who get their money from the congregations. They have created a self-serving entity. Now, you ought to read D.R. Dungan's book, and even he will say, years ago, that there is he'll say there is a silent agreement between the congregation and the preacher. The congregation doesn't want it, and the preacher is fine to not give it to them so long as they pay his salary. That's a silent agreement. And now the congregations to the preaching schools and the preaching schools to the colleges, they all have a silent agreement. We're all making money here, so let's not ruin it for everybody. And then someone says, well, Caleb, you can't just say it's all about making money. I see I see different ones getting master's degrees from like Freed-Hardeman and some of the other schools. And then I see years later, they still haven't done anything with their master's degrees. I just don't know why they're not getting out there in the local community. And that's evangelism not emphasized with these master's degrees. It's not about evangelizing the local community. It's about you get a master's degree so that you can then go teach at school for the next 30, 40 years. That's what everybody is gunning for. Now, one day, if we all make it that far along, I think that we might look back and I think that maybe some people will take up for me and they'll say that I was concerned, because I am concerned. I don't hate anybody in the picture, and I'm saying God knows me, and I feel very fine with myself this morning as I've said the things that I've said. And I just wish things would be better. People wonder, like they said, we just don't know why people are leaving the church. I think that if anybody basically wakes up long enough and they want to be active, they see all this political garbage, and then they say, oh, never mind. And I think that parents who have talked trash about the church in front of their kids, the kids grow up and they say, well, why would we want to be a part of this? Our parents did nothing but talk trash about it. And so I want things to be better. And we have taken flack for it, and we continue to. So I do think that maybe years from now people will say, if nothing else, they'll say, I think he was genuinely concerned. And I don't, while I am detached, someone says, well, you're not connected to anybody's party. I could be. I didn't have to do the things that I did that basically caused B.J. Clark to ask me to leave the Memphis School of Preaching. And the thing that what I did was I had a Bible study on Monday, and I said I'm not going to come back to, summer school. I'm not going to come back to summer school on Monday. I'll be there like Wednesday because I got a Bible study that I have to do. And so he didn't like the way, I didn't mean to give him an ultimatum, but that's the way I said it was. I have a Bible study. I won't be in class on Monday. And so basically what it came down to was I didn't ask permission. And so then he said, well, if you do this, that means you're leaving the school. I said, well, I don't want to leave the school. But that's how it played out. I don't hate him for that. I've been doing just fine. And y'all have heard me talk about Wesley Simons. I love Wesley. I send him letters and cards, and I tell him thank you for what he did for me. I don't hate these people. But I'm an observer, and I'm a participant just like you are. And I'm saying things are not going well. And for people who say we recognize things are not going well, I'm saying I'm giving you some explanation as to why things are not going well. And so now here's where we talk about what to do about it. It's the same thing. It's the same thing, y'all, as 1906. It's the same thing after World War II. We're just finding ourselves in the same place. So here's the playbook. Number one, not to be some people I'm not going to be able to convince them. Like when I say, I don't have a problem with any of these people. And I'll just go ahead and say one more nice thing about Curtis Cates. I had Curtis Cates for 2 hours. I'm saying one more nice thing about Curtis Cates. I had Curtis Cates for 2 hours at the Memphis School of Preaching. It was some of the best 2 hours I had in that entire year, which for some of the other classes that I had is not saying much. But his stuff was fantastic. It was an introduction to 1 Thessalonians, which was basically the life of Paul all through the book of Acts. It was good. It was wonderful. And he did just about all of it without any notes. He just came in and talked to us. And there's no telling how bad he felt while he did it. But here's the clip. Here's the audio.
Church split there. And you had the beginning of the worship on Mount Gerizim, the worship of the Samaritans.
Okay, this is what does the Bible say?
Yes. I've got a question.
Okay.
Should I tell you the question?
Yeah, I mean, you're on live.
Okay. Yeah, I'd like to know why a lot of pastors are afraid to preach and study the book of Revelation. They seem like they're afraid to study the book of Revelation because they don't want to make their church members don't understand it. I think that Revelation should be studied because of the end times. Everything, bad things happening in the world. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Well, in some senses, I think that's what a lot of them all they talk about is, and someone asked me the other day, we were out door knocking, let's see if I have my mic, they asked me door knocking what I thought about end times, and I said, I think that people get so consumed with end times that they forget about the meantime. So that caller, he said, why are they afraid to do it? And I would say it's what we're talking about today. They don't want to do it because they're going to upset one particular individual. Someone might say that they just don't see it as something they're going to fight with everybody else about. And I was listening to someone the other day talk about their ideas of pre-trib, mid-trib, post-trib, and that's pretty much Southern Baptist stuff. And they're all fighting with themselves about it. And I just say you end up getting consumed with infighting on the trib rather than actually going out and saying, if that's your end-time view, they don't even go out and get people ready for what their end-time view would be. So, to his answer to his question, why don't they teach on it or any type of topic, is the same reason why they don't teach on homosexuality. It's the same reason why they don't teach on marriage and divorce. Anything that they're going to shy away from, that plays a role in it. Now, this is what I want to do. 1 Kings 12. Let's hear Curtis one more time. Curtis Cates.
Nehemiah wouldn't compromise. You know who split it? Nehemiah. You know what over? False doctrine. That's what over. False practices. Somebody said, oh, these splits are terrible. Yes, some splits are. But if they're over the doctrine and the teaching of God, brother, they are a godsend and a blessing.
Amen, said the audience. So, I'm talking to people now. I'm basically getting off the schools. But I'm talking to you. You're in a local congregation. I get a lot of contact. And I'm saying whether it's text, email, phone call. And I get people who are upset with their local congregation. They're discouraged with their local congregation because nothing is getting done evangelistically. That's a problem. That's a big problem. Nothing's getting done as far as evangelistically speaking. They don't practice church discipline, and they don't really teach anything substantive from the pulpit. These are all problems. And so this is basically the thing that you find yourself. This is the moment you find yourselves in. You, and I can't imagine that you're the only one in the congregation who feels that way. So what your option now is you can spend the next however long of your life wrangling with these people who already have the truth and they've already had the opportunity. They know the gospel, they just don't care. Or you could actually just split and go be an evangelistic congregation on your own. And I'm saying a collection of people who feel the same way, they think the same way, and they actually want to work rather than just being traditional. And traditional is you gather on Sunday and you have potlucks. That's about it. And you argue and fight over high school football as if anybody cares about high school football. But that's what tradition is. Look, God is not condemning church splits. In 1 Kings 11 and 1 Kings 12, He is orchestrating a nationwide split. God is. God said to Solomon, howbeit I will not rend away all the kingdom, but will give one tribe to thy son for David my servant's sake and for Jerusalem's sake which I have chosen. God was fine with splitting the kingdom. He is going to be fine with splitting congregations today. And I will say this. I'm saying y'all, if y'all don't know, the girl I married came from Spring, Texas. So she grew up where David Brown is. And I was talking with David Brown, and he told me, he said if I had to do it over again, he said I wouldn't get involved with anybody's school. He said because all the while that you're in there, he said they're just trying to influence you. And when I did, and that's how everybody works. Everybody's trying to influence somebody. And as I left Wesley Simon School, he said, for the past year and a half, 2 years you've been here, he said, I've been trying to change you, been trying to tone you down. And I didn't want that. But that's what you get when you attach yourself to these things, these entities, I'm saying the schools and what have you, people's particular ministries, rather than just being an autonomous congregation, being evangelistic to the community where you immediately live. And so, you know, one thing that I was going to say a moment ago is I do like David Brown. I don't always like the things that they do, but that's everybody, right? That's what people say back to me. So, but that is what he said. If he had to do it all over again, he wouldn't get involved with the schools. So as we find ourselves collectively as a people not doing evangelism and basically seeing all these problems that just get overlooked, a split is not that bad of an idea. And one thing that I wanted to say a moment ago was, so, you know, I want to just go ahead and show you some of these books. You know, this is the conversation today. And the quote, look, I study history because I am interested in the future. Look, y'all, I am a student of history, and I am saying we're doing the exact same thing they were doing in the 1900s. We're doing the exact same thing they were doing in the 1940s. And these are the books that you can be reading. Let's go back over here. Okay, these are the books that you could be reading. The Christian Scholar by Adrian Doran and J.E. Choate. That's going to be the discussion of J.W. McGarvey and Hall Lowry Calhoun. Eyes of Jehovah, which is going to be James A. Harding, David Lipscomb. They are contemporaries with Hall Lowry Calhoun and J.W. McGarvey. And they're going through the late 1800s, early 1900s split over the piano. But they had a lot of things that were going on, like J.W. McGarvey, and I'm going to say this, y'all. J.W. McGarvey was beating back, higher criticism of the text. All these people who were saying that the Bible is not really an inspired text, J.W. McGarvey doing a lot of work on that. A lot of good work. So what if it's the case that somebody says, you know, he gave so much time to that he couldn't necessarily focus his argumentation on instrumental music? I am saying I appreciate his work on the authenticity and the inspiration of the text. In the meantime, I wish they could have done more. Middle book is called Our Heritage of Unity and Fellowship. It is a history book. I basically say this one in the middle. I'm going to say something else about it too. You go through there and you're going to see Daniel Summer, and you're going to find the, what's it called, Sand Creek Meeting House up in Indiana. And they had a huge split over the instrument, took it to court, all this big stuff, y'all. And I'm saying that was the idea they had back then too. If you have the piano, the missionary society goes with the piano. They were fighting about all this stuff. And basically it creates a roadblock to what? What the church ought to be doing in the local community. And someone might say, well, it might be because that people were starting to intertwine and become devoted to papers more than they ought to be. That might be part of it. So one thing I want to say about the book in the middle. Carl Ketcherside and Leroy Garrett, they call themselves ecumenical. I'm saying the word to say it, ecumenicalists. That's what they refer to themselves as. They are very liberal. And if someone said to me in the middle, well, why are you even reading that? I refuse to get my history from one source. And anybody who would advocate such is not a good student. So yeah, I'm going to read everything. Ed Harrell, Quest for a Christian America. This is a history from 1800 to 1865. His second book, Volume 2, Sources of Division in the Disciples of Christ, 1865 to 1900. And then the third book is The Churches of Christ in the 20th Century, which is a collection of Homer Haley, but then everything that he was involved in, I'm saying what was around him. Why? I'm studying history because I am interested in the future. A lot of people on their way out, and so they don't really care what's going on. I'm here for a while if my health holds up, and I'm here with your kids and your grandkids. So I'm interested in history, and I'm saying I think that we're doing the exact same things that we already did in history, and there's a way to fix it. And the way to fix it is an organized split. It's in the text, and people amend it when Curtis Cate said it. Now, let me say this. It was God's idea to split the kingdom, but you have to recognize this. God did split the kingdom over idolatry. It was not just for, I'm saying, general disagreements that people were having. And I am saying this now, not everything is going to be split worthy. And so you have these instances, Nadab and Abihu, Leviticus 10, they altered the worship. They changed the worship, and they individually were punished for it. Aaron and Miriam, Numbers 12, that was going to affect the ceremony. They basically were trying to say we're just as important as Moses, as if it's a competition, but they were saying we're just as important as Moses. He takes too much on himself, and they made it like it's a personal matter. All these things need to be handled. Korah, number 16, personal matter. They're cousins to Moses. They say the same thing. You take too much on yourself. They want to do more. Uzzah, 2 Samuel 6, they're carrying the ark in. That's a matter of organization. Now, I'm not saying to ignore any of those, but I'm saying, as I do this class today, when you have problems in the local congregation, the first thing that pops up in your mind should not be it's time for a split. Individuals can be worked with. Elders need to be involved with individuals. And I'm saying, y'all, if your elders are going to basically hire out the one man, at least be on the same page, man. I'm saying to have conversation about what needs to be addressed from the pulpit. The above revolve around ceremonial practices and organization, but they did not split the kingdom. Still, they were corrected. So yes, you need to be correcting things, but that's not to say that a split has to take place immediately. And so we're going to talk about some of these signs. All this is discussion out of 1 Kings chapter 12 about what the split looks like, what it entails. So can I say this too? I don't have a problem with it if somebody says, Caleb, you picked a really big topic to be not the most experienced individual. I have witnessed splits from the outside, and I have participated. So I recognize there are going to be people who are more educated on the topic as I am. So if you want to basically just say this is my run through 1 Kings 12, then yeah, I invite anybody to do a better job than I'm doing. And God bless them for it. But let's look at this. The moment of the split was a symptom. It was not really the problem in 1 Kings 11 and 12. You know what I'm saying? Idolatry was the moment where God said, okay, we're fixing to rend the kingdom. But it was a symptom of a previous problem, which was Solomon and his strange wives. So this is going to be the thing. When you find yourself in a congregation coming to a split, let's pause. I'm teaching right now what to do with your Old Testament. This is an application study of 1 Kings 12. What do you do with 1 Kings 12? You get a playbook for how to have a church split. People don't like that, but that's what it's there. It's one of the things that it can do. Last time I was on, we talked about what it could actually do for your civil state studies, and that's true too. But you probably should recognize more times than not that when you do find yourself arriving at having a split, what you're probably splitting over is not the actual problem. You're probably splitting over a symptom of a problem that's been festering for about a number of years. And that's how it's happening here in the book of Kings. It's a problem of estranged wives. They're suffering from a symptom. And then someone might say, well, what you're calling a problem was really the symptom. He wouldn't be marrying all these strange wives if the previous generations had wiped out the Canaanites. And that's true. And so we could do that all day. What's the problem? What's the symptom? Either way, we need to find the problem so we can get rid of these symptoms. And in the meantime, you might just find yourself treating a symptom. And you're going to have a problem. But if nothing else, we can do something with this symptom. We're going to have a point to that in a moment where you're going to say nothing is ever going to be perfect. So you look at Genesis 37:26. This is what I'm saying. Your splits do not happen overnight. One thing that I wish I could get people to see, and that has been very helpful for me, and it's not original to me, I've been helped. These people inside of your Bible are real people, and they have a collected history together. There's no reason. So I'm going to tell you, I don't feel this way about either way. I have lived in Virginia my whole life. I don't know too many jokes about Virginia to West Virginia. I think that there are jokes that people make where you can always swap out whoever the butt of the joke is. So yeah, I could come up with jokes about West Virginia. And then the rest of my family is from Texas, and I don't care about Texas versus Oklahoma. And in fact, I think most of these ideas are stupid. But for some people, they're there. I think they're ridiculous, but still, it's a part of their thinking. There's no reason for me to read my Old Testament and not act as if these people are not carrying baggage with them. And in reality, this is what working with people looks like. It is their baggage, and it's my baggage. I've got it. you've got it, but we're coming into this realm together, which is the church, and we're trying to all say, for the sake of one another, I'm going to try to relinquish some of this baggage. But look what happens in Genesis 37:26. Who are they selling into slavery? And someone says, well, it's not slavery. Whatever you want to call it, it's against his will. It's Joseph. Judah said to his brethren, they're all thinking about killing him. Judah said to his brethren, what profit is it if we slay our brother and conceal his blood? Judah is the individual who has the idea of, let's not kill him, let's sell him, and then we make money, and we still won't ever see him again. So Joseph, later on, gets turned into the tribes of Ephraim and Manasseh, right? So why, in 1 Kings 11 and 1 Kings 12, who is Jeroboam? Jeroboam is from Ephraim. Ephraim and Manasseh are the two sons of Joseph. I recognize there's a lot of history, but y'all, in our time right now, there's a lot of history, and someone might say, that's just water under the bridge. We got a lot of water flowing under the bridge, and people are still upset about it in all kinds of ways. I cannot act as if this is not a possibility, and this is what I'm saying, y'all. People involved in a church split, they will bring up anything under the sun. And it doesn't have to make sense. I'm just telling you to get ready for it. And what does get ready for it mean? It means don't fall for it. Stick with whatever the topic or the issue at hand is. Now, if it's the case that we're dealing with a symptom and you have pinpointed the actual problem, don't let them be coming in saying, and by the way. No. We're dealing with this right now. And I'm saying, y'all, this stuff could easily be coming up. Judah, Ephraim, Manasseh could very well all be having tension within themselves because of things they themselves were not even involved in. The people who are splitting in 1 Kings 12 were not even around in Genesis 37. But that doesn't mean that people don't still want to just fight about something, and some people just want to fight. Let's go over here. So I actually know some people. I know some brethren, and they just went through a church split. And one of the things that I said to him, I said, if I can encourage you on something, is I said, you ought to beware of the people who just want to fight. I said, some people get revved up in a split, just want to fight about something, then they get over with you, and they just want to fight with you. Quarrelsome. If any man have any quarrel against any, Colossians 3:13. Some people just that way. Strive, right? Railing. They're always going to be that way. Hopefully they repent. But I would say, don't be tying yourself up with those folk. So, a lot of baggage gets brought in. I'm saying beware of the baggage. Do not fall into a trap of bringing up ancient baggage. Now, here's another thing. 2 Samuel, this is not so distant baggage. 2 Samuel 19:40, this is David. Then the king went to Gilgal and went on with him, and all the people of Judah conducted the king, and also half the people of Israel. And behold, all the men of Israel came to the king and said unto the king, why have our brethren, the men of Judah, stolen thee away, and have brought the king and his household and all David's men with him over Jordan? And all the men of Judah answered, and the men of Israel, because the king is near of kin to us. Wherefore then be ye angry of this matter? Have we eaten all of the king's cost, or has he given us any gift? And the men of Israel answered the men of Judah and said, we have 10 parts in the king, and we have also more right to David than ye. Why then did ye despise us, that our advice should not be first had in bringing back our king? So, here's my point. This is already what? 10-2. They said, we have more part than you. We have 10 parts in the king. 10 versus 2, just like God split it in chapter 11. This is more recent baggage, I'm telling you. Something comes up, folk are going to start wanting to dump their baggage into the mix. Don't let them do it. That's not what we're dealing with right now. We've got to fix this. We have to stay on track because something needs to be done about this. But now I want to make another point out of this. This is in your notes. You should be making an arrow from 2 Samuel 19 to 1 Kings 11 and 12. They already had a 10-2 split going on in their mind, and they're mad at Judah. Now, here's what people are going to do. They're going to get mad about stuff that really is nothing to be getting mad over. Now, I might just be simple and not know the full extent of what's going on here, but to me it kind of sounds like they're mad that they didn't get to participate in a parade. David has been on the run, and he's been across the Jordan, and now he's coming home to Jerusalem. And they say, Judah brought the king home by themselves. And the rest of the tribes say, why weren't we involved? Why can't you just in the moment say, the king is back, and we're glad we're finding ourselves in a moment of peace. We're having a good time, and you guys are now finding something to complain about. And can I say something else about this? They find something that, in my estimation of reading this text, is not that heavy. The king was brought home, we just didn't get to bring him home. And I'm telling you, in a split, and in some ways you need this, but I'm saying it becomes us versus them real quick. The idea in an ideal situation is we are all brethren. I would wish that there was not such a fast track to us versus them, but these people went us versus them real quick. It went 10-2 real quick. That's not good. And so here's the thing, y'all. Congregations all over the place, while what I'm doing right now some people are not going to like, but in reality, congregations all over need to be having sermons prepping congregations for when a church split does happen. You want to know the game plan of a church split before you even get into it. You can't be studying this stuff, real time. I think we're in it. We're about to have a split. Everybody get your books out. That's not how this is going to work. And some people don't even know what books to get out. Don't even own the books. So they need to be having these type of conversations, and this is one of the things to think about. It shouldn't be an us versus them. At the end of the day, God loves them. I'm not saying someone says, well, there's a right and a wrong. You're right, there is a right and a wrong. But God wishes those people who are wrong would be with the right position. I can go through this. I'm saying I can go through this, disagree without being disagreeable. I can have my principles and my convictions, and I can basically stake myself on those, and I don't have to hate you. And I don't have to get nasty. Some people get nasty. I don't have to do that. And I will say this as we get a little bit further into the conversation. When I say principles and convictions, right? If I'm informed and I think I'm in the right, I'm telling you, I'm not going to be disagreeable while disagreeing, and I don't want to be nasty, but I am telling you, I'll work them over. If we're doing what's right, and we find these people to be 2 Timothy 2:25 opposing themselves, then no, I'm not just going to lay down and let them wreak havoc on good brethren. You got to get those type of thoughts going in your head, right? It's not an either-or thing. Hebrews 12:15, they don't happen overnight. This stuff's been festering for a long time. I'm showing you 2 Samuel 19. They already had a us versus them, 10-2. Why is it those people said, we've got 10 pieces more to King David? And then God just coincidentally splits it 10-2 in 1 Kings 11? I don't think so. I think they already had tension. And I can find places of tension. Genesis 37, Joshua 17. It's all over the place. Hebrews 12:15, looking diligently lest any man fail to the grace of God, lest any root of bitterness spring up, trouble you, and thereby many be defiled. The number one rule of conflict resolution is stating the problem. Everybody in the room acting as if the problem does not exist is not accomplishing anything. You're just going to make the blow up that much hotter when you finally arrive to the blow up. Hebrews 12:15, they are a root of bitterness. You got to do something with it. And why do people not do anything with it? You know why. It's the elder's granddaughter. He ain't doing nothing. It's, you get these people who are connected. Well, if I do that, blah, blah, blah. I tell you what, as an adult, I just don't really care anything about your Christmas. How old are you? Honestly, all these folk out here talking about, that's going to ruin Christmas. Oh my, a day out of your year. For the sake of the local congregation, give me a break. Why don't we just go ahead and have a conversation when everything is done with him about his seriousness? My one day out of the year. Bunch of materialism anyways. Joshua 17:14, look at this. Reasoning, this is my thing too. I said a moment ago, you don't always have to have a split. I think things can really be resolved and resolved effectively. But reasoning for a split is always in reach. The people who just want it, and they've been waiting around wanting it. Joshua 17:14. The children of Joseph, they spake unto Joshua, saying, Why hast thou given me but one lot and one portion to inherit, seeing I am a great people, for as much as the Lord has blessed me hitherto? I'm talking about a lot of self-willed, puffed-up people for some reason get to inhabit the local congregation, and we all know who they are. Somebody says, well, I just don't know if you can call them puffed up. Then why does the Bible even talk about it if we can never identify it? We know who they are. And they're just waiting in the wings, waiting in the dark. They're never involved. They just hang out, and they are just waiting for something to come up. Joshua 17:14, and they're almost always. The children of Joseph, here's my point about 10-2, right? Us versus them. Ephraim and Manasseh, they're just a package deal. They're the sons of Joseph, and they go together. And so in Joshua, when all the land is being dispersed and whatnot, they're just consistently called the children of Joseph. Ephraim and Manasseh are going to be together. Why have you given us but one lot and one portion to inherit, seeing I am a great people? When you go through a split, there's going to be a lot of people feeling that they are entitled to something, and they're not. And it's a good time for everybody to get basically on a level playing field. So, someone might say, you're not really making this sound like this is something we want to do. Nobody wants to do it. Nobody wants to do it, but it can only get worse. And I'm going to say this to you, numbers don't matter in a church split. 1Kings 12:16. What portion have we in David? Neither have we inheritance in the son of Jesse. 10 tribes versus 2. And so this is what people start saying, well, if we split the church, we already have an idea that majority of the congregation is going to go with them. Good. Let them go. Deuteronomy 7, verse number 7. The Lord did not set his love upon you, nor choose you, because you were more in number than any of the people. For you are the fewest of all the people. It's just a general, maybe you're saying it from ignorance, because you don't know any better, or you really just don't have faith. Well, if we don't have this many people, what? If we don't have this many do-nothing people? Do-nothing, no less people? God does not need a giant multitude to get something done. So, I don't know the term for it, but you know what it is, like when they say 20% does 80%. Them. Numbers don't matter. In Luke 9:1 and then Luke 10:1, about that general area, he called 12 and then he called 70 also. That's 82 people working Palestine. I understand someone says, well, it's going to grow astronomically. Yeah, but it started out 12 and 70. And they were working. And that's the difference between them and today's church. They worked, we don't. You know that we don't. Like I said, annual door knocking day, just a bunch of lectureships that everybody goes to, and you see the same audience, hear the same sermons. It's just seen and be seen and bump elbows with one another. 1Kings 12, 6, 8, and 28. Here's a point that you need to have as you go through this. Like I said, nobody wants to do it, but you got to be informed. So Rehoboam consulted with old men, then he consulted with the young men, and then Jeroboam, he takes counsel. You know, I'm saying numbers don't matter, but at the end of it, the numbers that you do have, only a small fraction of that number are actually going to be paying attention. Probably people are not even going to understand what the issue is about, but we know that personalities are getting drug into it, and so if you can keep personalities out of it, that'd be fantastic. But you're not going to have everybody paying attention. And it's the same idea. This is something that someone told my dad years ago. My dad, in the 90s, was going out to raise funds to go overseas, and somebody told my dad, they said, Johnny, when you get into a meeting with these elders and you're going to be trying to talk to them about funds to go do mission work, he said, you're only going to have about 5 minutes with these guys. And he said, because one of these elders, he said he's got a 5-minute brain span until he starts thinking about his cows that got out. When I get home, I'm not just going to get home and relax. I got to go home and get my cows. He said, so you better get him real quick. He said, and the other elder, he's only got a 5-minute window in his head because his wife told him before Bible class tonight that the sink was leaking. So he's got to get home and he's got to get the sink. And then the other one, he's got some type of reason why he can't pay attention. I'm saying that is how church splits work. You're only going to have a handful of people who are even keeping up with what's going on. I'm just saying get ready for it. And someone says, well, I don't get ready for it. Y'all, you look at history, sometimes these are essential. And it is the idea of, can I say this? Let me find it. So this is it. Here it is. Tares among the wheat. There are a lot of people who look at this Matthew 13:25 and they say, tares among the wheat, we can't do anything about that. That happened in the first century. And you're not dealing with tares among the wheat like they were. These were Jews who could very, very much blend in with these New Testament Christians. And you have that in Romans 14 and 1 Corinthians 8. And so it would be the case that they said, we are seeing through a glass darkly, 1 Corinthians 13, 2 Corinthians chapter 3. He said some people have a veil over their heart still to this day. So it would not be as clearly stated as then as it would be later on. Y'all, we have the fully revealed word right now. What is the problem with saying, well, there are these wheat and tares growing together? If we have the fully revealed word, and 2 Peter chapter 1 verse number 3 says we have all things pertaining to life and godliness, then why is it so hard to figure out the right side and the wrong side? And I'm saying most of y'all would not reason that way unless it's a church split. See, and I'm saying y'all believe in an objective truth. There's a right and there's a wrong. Oh, good. Well, now we're about to have a church split. Well, wheat and the tares, I just don't know. They're so close together. I don't know if you can do anything about that. You know better than that. You don't believe that because in any other realm, you wouldn't argue that way. But here's my thing. There's only going to be a handful of people participating. And that is what a Christian life looks like. Y'all been on autopilot, sleeping through most Sunday morning services anyways. And I'm saying what I'm presenting to you is real life Christian activity. It's in your text, and it's in the history books. Why would we not be informed about it? And I would be saying this, don't be making predictions as you're trying to go midstream through a split. Well, if we split, they'll have all the money. 2 Chronicles 1:15, and it says Solomon made silver and gold at Jerusalem as plenteous as stones. I can't imagine that Solomon's treasury is not going to stay with Solomon's son, Rehoboam. But even still, let's look at 2 Chronicles 25, 2 Chronicles chapter 25, verse number 9. Amaziah said to the man of God, but what shall we do for the 100 talents which I have given to the army of Israel? And the man of God answered, the Lord is able to give thee much more than this. Hey, you know what? I hope that y'all do get to start out with some money. If you're going to split and you're going to do an evangelistic work, yeah, I hope that you're not just starting out bare bones. But 2 Chronicles 25:9 says God is able to give you much more. You have to have some faith, and this is what I would like to say. If nothing else, it's going to be an opportunity for some of y'all to start learning wisdom and stewardship. You know, I had to learn to be the way that I am. Someone says, well, no, you just are. I don't believe that. I think that I was molded and shaped, and I am a penny pincher. And now that's not to say that we can't be generous and make contributions when they're needed, but in the meantime, let's not be ridiculous here, right? And so for some people, you go through a split and you don't come out with hardly any money, it might be an opportunity for you to learn better. So I heard a story recently about, I don't know where they were, but this was a congregation, they had a men's meeting, and the parking lot had not been paved yet. They had gravel. In the men's meeting, a couple of the fellows, they said, we'd like to talk about possibly paving the parking lot. And they said, because when our wives come in on Sunday morning, their high heels are getting scuffed up in the gravel. And then another man spoke up and he said, why don't we think about funding more evangelism? And the parking lot will get taken care of later on. He said, let's put first things first. There's a lot of people out there that think that way. They don't care a thing about evangelism. It's the parking lot, it's the roof, it's the carpet, it's the paint on the walls, it's the air conditioner unit. It's everything but evangelism. And I'm saying if you're going to get serious, it might be a wake-up call. So Luke 16, 1 and 2, there was a certain rich man which had a steward, and the same was accused unto him that he wasted his goods. And he called him and said to him, How is that I hear this of thee? Give an account of thy stewardship, for thou mayest be no longer steward. Man, y'all, congregations of the body of Christ throughout America are sitting on bank accounts that are astronomical that they do nothing with. And that's Hebrews 13, 17. Yeah, the elders are going to have to answer for that. And that, I would say that some people are going to have to answer for it too, that they weren't concerned about where their contribution went. You're in charge of your contribution. The end of Acts chapter 11, I don't understand why any of y'all would keep giving to a congregation that does not do evangelism. And I sure don't understand questions, and they don't even get to call their own preacher and ask Bible questions, and you keep paying that dude's salary. You can't call him, and he doesn't answer the phone when you do call. Acts 11, 27 through verse number 30. They determined where their contribution went. And I'm saying, Christians all over are going to answer for what they did with their money. Elders just accumulating it in the bank accounts, not doing any evangelism with it. And it's like, it's always a thing, well, what if this happens to the building? We're going to talk about the building in just a little bit. 1 Kings 12, Jeroboam, Rehoboam, 10 tribes in the north, 2 tribes in the south. This is your playbook for having a church split. Someone says, well, if we have a church split, they're going to have all the priests, right? If there's 10 tribes in the north, and the Levites have their own suburbs throughout the tribes, well, obviously they're going to have more number of priests than we are, and we don't want to be put into that. Here's what I say to that. Basically, this comes down to it. You might find yourself in a congregation and the split is on, and you might actually find yourself being against the preacher and the elders. Someone says, if we don't have them, who's going to do the teaching? So here's what I say. I hear sermons. Okay? You say, Caleb, you're asking a lot of me. You're saying, I've never been to a preaching school. You can do just as good of a job as the guys who have been through preaching school. I hear their sermons, they're not good. And that's not the school's fault. That is men who leave school and they don't practice their craft. That's their fault. So I'm going to give you a personal example about this the other day. What did I say? One time I told a story about I came home, got a book in the mail, and y'all are going to think that, like I don't give my wife attention. I left the house at 6 o'clock today, and I just held my wife while she cried about her back hurting. It's like people are making an excuse for themselves. Because I give you insight into my life, and then people start trying to say, well, you don't give your wife enough attention. I give her attention. You're trying to make an excuse as why you shouldn't work as hard as you ought to be working. But I came home one day, and, it's however late. I get home, got this book in the mail. I sit down, I start reading that book. My wife says, are you seriously just going to start reading that book? I said, I've been waiting all week on this book. Came home the other night, came home late, got down on the couch, got my laptop out, started working on an article, and she said, you're just going to start doing that? And I said, hey, it was not good enough for the paper. I got it sent back to me. I had to fix a couple things, got to get it done. Why? Because it's that serious. I take what I do very seriously. And I'm taking care of her while I do it. Anybody out there, and I've heard some of these fat preachers say to my dad, they say, well, we can't work like you do, Johnny. We got family. What do you think I am to Johnny? I got siblings. He's got a wife. We got in-laws all over the place. You don't want to work is what it is. And I'm saying, y'all, you think I just love working like that? What I am privileged to get to do when I do it, it carries weight because the truth is in it. Yeah, I'd love. Do you know that before 2020 happened and we started doing the school, I hadn't played golf in 2 years. I'm not complaining, I'm just telling you. I haven't played golf in 2 years. And yeah, I in a part of my mind, I say I'd like to go do X, Y, Z. But I'm here for I'm here for a short time, and people complain about the world, and they don't do anything to try to fix it. Well, I'm just not going to be one of those people. I'm not going to complain and not do anything. Jesus said, I must work the works of him that sent me while it is day, John 9:4. The night cometh when no man can work. So I'm here for a very short time, and y'all are all saying, well, we need to leave the world a good place for our kids. And then you don't work. I'm working on my kids and your kids. You can do a better job than these guys who are coming out of the school of preaching. Any school of preaching. If you will be a serious Bible student on your own time, of your own right, you can be a fantastic communicator. Can I say this? It is a practice thing. Me saying here right now that you can do it does not mean you're going to do it tomorrow. And I'm saying you can do it tomorrow. It doesn't mean that you're going to be as good as you'd like to be. You're going to practice. You're going to get better. You're going to get to such a degree that you're going to look backwards and say, I did not like that stuff. And people say, we thought it was good. And then you say, I didn't know what I was doing back then. That's my grandmother. I told her, I said, I got a quilt. I still got that quilt that you made from however long ago. She said, I didn't know what I was doing back then. I liked it. That's my favorite quilt. And I find out she said it wasn't that good. Your sermons will be that way. Your articles will be that way. Your in-home Bible studies will be that way. You are practicing, but if you don't ever start practicing, then no, you'll never be able to do it. But you got to start somewhere. And you keep up this idea about, well, I haven't been to preaching school. I'm seeing guys in preaching school right now. They're not applying themselves. When I went to school, we had guys didn't even take their books home. The school made you buy these books, and they would sit on their desk the whole quarter long. So the school knew that type of stuff was going on, and they knew who sat there. They'll have all the priests. We can't split. 2 Chronicles 11:14. The Levites left their suburbs and their possessions and came to Judah and Jerusalem, for Jeroboam and his sons had cast them off from executing the priest's office unto the Lord. I have at the top, there are good people on both sides. But what is evidenced by 2 Chronicles 11:14 is that the good people are going to end up gravitating towards the right side. I know. I've been doing these case classes. I've been doing these Old Testament studies. And I like giving people room. But yeah, that's the truth. The good people are all going to gravitate toward the right side. I can't do anything about that. You're basically sitting there listening to this and you're saying, well, what does that imply about a whole bunch of people? To me, it implies that they're concerned more about tradition than anything else. They're concerned about who their friends are more than anything else. And my real friends are the people who will be honest with me, and I get to be honest with them. And I have to say, too, in all this, I just want to say something really quickly. I don't use any of my friends as stepping stools on like a political ladder. Number one, I've already said in this class, I'm not interested in people's political ladder, but I am not going to use them. And so you might find that maybe, like you say, well, Caleb, I'm just saying, I don't know who you are. I don't really know who I'm talking about in particular right now. This is just maybe. You might be talking to me and you might be saying, well, Caleb, I don't find you to be that candid as you claim to be with other people. Maybe I don't think I can trust you. Maybe I'm looking at some people who are just basically out here to gouge folk on one particular item, and they're not really a Bible student. What happened with some people is you heard something you didn't like. That doesn't mean you have a clue about the Bible. And that stuff's all over the place. 2 Chronicles 15:9. They'll have all the numbers, they'll have all the people. I say good people on both sides, but the good people end up gravitating to the same side, which is the right side. He gathered all Judah and Benjamin, and the strangers with them out of Ephraim and Manasseh, and out of Simeon, for they fell to him out of Israel in abundance, when they saw that the Lord his God was with him. 2 Chronicles 15:9. Now, this is where I said a moment ago, you're never going to be perfectly satisfied in all this. If you go up north, you're going to have a good king with improper religion, right? You're going to be feeling bad because the temple's down south. But if you go down to the south, you got Rehoboam, who is an awful king, but we've got proper religion. We got the temple. I say, after the split's done, people are going to be second-guessing everything. And it's like the people who second-guess are the people who had the least amount of skin in the game. And I have down at the bottom, Romans 14:5, let every man be fully persuaded. Whatsoever is not done of faith is sin, Romans 14:23. If you're having that much problem with how things are going, you need to get somewhere. And it's obviously not here. And I'm not going to abide all this second guessing from people who did not know what to do on the front end. You don't like how it's going? Then you have options to be with do-nothing congregations. Caleb, why would you not be that honest? Because you were telling me a moment ago before the split happened, all y'all were miserable, and now you're talking about abiding more misery. The second guessing. If you have that much of a problem, Romans 14:5, you got to make it up in your mind. And I'm saying that while saying this. I don't know of a situation where everybody's going to say, we just came out whole hog, perfectly, blah, blah, blah. There's always going to be incidentals and things where someone could say, well, we wish we could do it this way. You know, Alexander Campbell did what he did later in life. He looked back and he said, you know, I wish it didn't have to be that way. I think it had to be that way. And then in the 1906 time frame, had to be that way. A bunch of people later on looked back and said, we wish it didn't have to be that way. Then the 1940s and the 50s, institutional, non-institutional, what have you. Some people look back at it and say, wish it didn't have to be that way. Maybe. But at the end of it, you do have to say, my conscience is okay with it. Are there some things we wish played out better? Yeah, but at the end of it, my conscience is okay with it. And after a split, the wrong side's not going to leave you alone. 1 Corinthians 12:18. If you don't know, I'm giving you an outline of 1 Kings 12. This is how you do your Old Testament study. You find how it works and makes application to your New Testament activity. You are a member of the body of Christ. The body of Christ is going to have problems. How do we go about correcting those problems? 1 Kings 12:18, they had a split. And well, when the split is done, the people are not going to leave you alone. 1 Kings 12:18, they already said, the northern tribe already said, to your tents, O Israel, what inheritance have we in Jesse? But that did not stop Rehoboam from sending his tax collector. Rehoboam sent Adoram, who was over the tribute, and all Israel stoned him with stones, that he died. Therefore King Rehoboam made speed to get him up to his chariot to flee to Jerusalem. They're not going to leave you alone. So in the 90s, late 90s, when they had a split in Collinsville, Virginia, and the Collinsville Church of Christ, when they had a split, it was just like, you know, the folk who left and they now formed the Martinsville congregation, they did not waste time picking back at Collinsville. Martinsville just went on and they did their business. And ever since then, Collinsville has not been able to keep a preacher very long. Look at Nehemiah 6:2. This is what Curtis Cates was talking about. Nehemiah, he said Nehemiah caused the church split. I'm saying Jeroboam and Rehoboam church split. Sanballat sent unto me, saying, come, let us meet together in some one of the villages in the plain of Ono. But they thought to do me mischief. You don't have to get drawn into every worthless squabble. I got people trying to draw me into their squabbles, and I am fine, good conscience, to say no thank you. Y'all ain't doing nothing, ain't got nothing to offer, just want to waste my time, my energy, and hope and pray. You're hoping and praying you can throw a wrench into what does the Bible say. Give me a break, no thank you. You can be that way. You can be, Matthew 6:22, single-eyed. We do evangelism here. I had somebody the other day call me, talking to me about what some member of the church, not even in his local congregation, is doing that I don't even know who this person is. And I said, I'm done. I said, I'm out. I have limited energy as a one created being. I got limited energy. I got limited time. I said, I am not spending time arguing with you. Why are you... Can I say this? Why are you arguing with these people that you can't hang with? You don't even know where you fall in the argumentation. If you're coming to me to ask me a question, you obviously don't know what your own principles are. So how do you know you don't agree with them? I can argue my principles. I can argue my convictions. And if you're calling me mid-argument saying, I now don't know how to answer him, then I don't know that you actually disagree with him. That's what I'm saying. Lifelong practice Bible study. Y'all treating folk out here like they're your answer hotline, and you do Google that way. Just run to Google. That's bad Bible study. These people are not going to leave you alone, and you're going to have to ignore them. You're going to have to stay single-minded, single-eyed in Romans 12:19. If they are getting dirty and vicious, y'all, I had people back in the day, I'm talking about my parents, people making rumors up about my mother, people sending packets out to the Brotherhood about my dad. People, I'm saying, y'all, we had folk from Collinsville that drove all the way down to Florida just to talk trash about my dad to a congregation down in Florida. Just stay busy with evangelism. Can I say this? You know, when you look at the life of David, David never actually does go out and fight with Absalom. And that's commendable in some respect. But at some point, you do have to have a Joab. And I just don't know why some folk allow Absaloms to just run the world and talk trash about David rather than you be a Joab and actually stand up and defend David. And that's what it was. I'm saying folk from Collinsville drive all the way down to Florida. Where are the Joabs? Where are the Benaiahs in those circumstances that would actually say, this is ridiculous? Well, number one, how it's like you're giving us your first report. And I had people call me about their marriage situations. And I have to tell them, look, I can't take it. A marriage is a double-sided entity. I can't take your one story and start making judgments. And they say, well, I don't want you talking to them. I'm done talking to you if I can't talk to both of y'all. This is your playbook. Rehoboam did not leave them alone, and when y'all have a church split, go about your business. Don't be thinking about them. You can pray for them. Fantastic, pray for them. But don't be wasting your time arguing with them. And if they start trying to rope you up, they say, well, we would like to revisit the issue. Why? How is it not clear enough on the front end? What you want to do is you want to waste my time because y'all don't do anything. At the end of the day, being right in the church split does not mean you're going to stay right. You have to work on yourself. Once you get out of a church split, you don't just get to say, hooray, the church split. No, you got to stay on course. And Jeroboam did not. This is your outline for 1Kings 12. You say, I don't know what to do with my Old Testament Bible study. This is it, man. You go through, you find how it applies over into your New Testament lifestyle. You are a Christian inhabiting the church. These were God's people inhabiting a nation. When unrighteousness was prevailing, they had a split, and God ordained it. Jeroboam then had the 10 tribes. He had God's blessing, and he changed. He said, we're going to build an altar in Dan and Bethel. They're going to worship these golden calves. Starting out right in the church split doesn't mean you're going to stay right. Now, here's our closing thought. God split the kingdom, and he moved his favor to the north. What then were the people going to do without and still keep God's favor? The temple. Number one, this ought to answer everybody's question where folks say, what happened to the Hebrews when they had to spend 70 years in Babylon without the temple and all the items? I would say about the same thing that was going to happen to the tribes in the north when God, through his own doing, sectioned them off from the temple. See what I'm saying? Here's my statement to this. In the split, historically, the good guys lost the buildings, but I'm here to say stop worrying about the buildings. If you can get the building, hey, that's great. I'm all for righteousness prevailing, like in every facet, in every circumstance. But I'm saying I think a lot of time and energy was wasted. These are those history books again. Look, man, y'all spent so much time and money on these buildings, and nobody's coming to them. Y'all thought it was Field of Dreams out here. If you build it, they will come. Ain't nobody coming to your big, dumb building. No matter how good you make it look, no one cares about the building because they're not getting good teaching inside. And they're not finding people who even care about fellowship on the inside. It's like I'm just hanging out in a nice building. And the seating's not even comfortable. If you lose the building, it's not the worst thing. These are the history books. Ed Harrell, he's got 3. He like 100 years worth of history. 200 years of history right there. He does a good job. Now, I study history because I'm interested in the future. And I think, y'all, that the future is looking this way. So in the book, The Stone Campbell Movement, one of the things that was said was Campbell was so successful in promoting his religious liberty because in 1809, liberty was still on everybody's lips left over from 1776. Hey, is history repeating itself? Maybe. Ought to be taking advantage of it if it is. When I look at the New Testament text, I find small groups. Now someone might say, well, now you don't know that. I'm saying they are meeting in people's homes. And I'm seeing from Acts chapter 5 and Acts chapter 2 that they are with each other on a daily basis. These are people who are inhabiting one another's lives. And I think what was seen in J.D. Texas Preacher, where they had a state convention, when you start building something that large is where people are able to hide out and go unnoticed. And the church is not designed to be that way. You are supposed to have shepherds in your lives. You are supposed to be brothers and sisters inside each other's lives. This idea where we create such a big entity where I don't really have to know you is not biblical. And that's why people are able just to drift away from the congregation. They fall away and someone says, remember them? What happened to them? They never brought in the first place. You do your own study about how the church was looking in the New Testament, and you ask, are we honestly recreating it again? Now, I'm going out with this. Paul split the church over the Lord's Supper, 1 Corinthians 11. We'll do this next time. 3 John, split over tyrants in the church. Diotrephes loves to have the preeminence. He tells them, beloved, follow not that which is evil. You're going to have to get away from Diotrephes. It's not easy. I'm not telling you that it's easy, but I am saying that it is worth it. But I would say this as I go out. If you do split, please don't splinter. Don't split just to go off and a couple months later have a subsequent split. Galatians 5:19 and 21, I wish we didn't have to have splits, but that's not the world we live in. And the people who are responsible for making parties, seditions, heresies, that's Galatians 5:19. Ephesians 4, verse number 2, with all lowliness and meekness, long-suffering, forbearing one another in love. And Colossians 3:14 says, above all these things put on charity, which is the bond of perfectness. Please don't splinter. Really, love these people. Take them into your lives. Try to make headway. Try to keep the congregations together. Try to keep the congregations active for the sake of the people who are outside, who would come in if they had a good, solid presentation and an invitation. More What Does the Bible Say Tonight, 9 p.m. More What Does the Bible Say Tomorrow Night at 8 p.m. I have to go. My phone number is 276-806-3641. My email is calebgrobertson@gmail.com. Email me. We will put you on the informer list right here. Page and a half Bible article, and let people know about What Does the Bible Say on YouTube. I got to go. We love you. God bless you.